Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And boy, do we have a show in store for you as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We have, well, so many topics. I don't even know where to begin. Did you see, interestingly enough, a little, I don't know if you call it op research or some vice presidential shortlist candidates maybe putting a little bit of a bug in Trump's ear. They're suggesting at the New York Post that, Tim Scott, he just doesn't have it. Insiders, anonymous insiders around the Trump campaign saying he's on the short list, but probably not top 5. And it's quite a lengthy piece. And I think that's interesting because to me that signals somebody, I wouldn't think within the New York Post, but someone within the campaign or someone that wants to be VP is probably putting out this research in hopes, or this hit piece, if you will, in hopes that it discourages Trump. Found that kind of fascinating. We do have some updates on Cuomo this morning, as well as Hochul and just New York in general. First, the update that had so much conversation yesterday. Yes, Joey Chestnut is now going to face Kobayashi. If you recall, Kobayashi, what kind of started this whole thing, the competition between the two. They're going to face each other on Labor Day. It's called Chestnut versus Kobayashi, Unfinished Beef. Yes, you'll find that there is a lot of puns regarding the hot dog eating contest. Now, I'm not sure if it says if they're going to be using that vegan hot dog that caused Joey Chestnut to be banned, I guess is the term they're using now, from the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. Now, Kobayashi, they say here at CNN, popularized competitive eating. And I think there's a point there, but I think it was a rival between him and Chestnut that really brought it to the new level. Apparently it is, because I know this is not typical of this program. We don't always hit on the pop culture things. I just find this one fascinating, and it is getting coverage everywhere. CNN, I've seen it other outlets as well. Netflix said the last time the two faced off was back in 2009 when Chestnut edged past Kobayashi, and that started Chestnut's reign. He did have that one falling out that time, going through a lot of personal issues. I had interviewed him right after that, and it was just a tough year for him, but he took the yellow mustard championship belt so seriously that he put his mind back in the game and really trained and won again the next year. Now, the reason I bring this up, and I'm not going to talk any more about it because you've heard most of the updates, but Kirsten Fleming from the New York Post took an interesting and bold stance on this. She said, for the sake of America, Joey Chestnut and Nathan's hot dogs must come to a peace agreement. Now, I know yesterday, and I don't disagree with the comments that we received on it, that maybe the hot dog eating contest should be more of a actual eating contest where the hot dogs aren't dipped in water. You know how disgusting it is. I don't have to talk about it. She says the news of the falling out reverberated online with a consensus of shock and outrage. Barstool Sports demanded free Joey Chestnut. Every media outlet from Food and Wine to the Hollywood Reporter to the New York Times jumped on the story. And she didn't mention Frankly Speaking, but we did too. Folks flooded social media, bemoaning the move as un-American and unpatriotic, a lapse in our national conscience. How could the best to ever do it, the main draw, be sidelined? And we know the reason why, and I guess you can't blame him. That's kind of one of the issues the PGA had, right? About why Phil and others were so upset because they kind of controlled the image and they wanted to be able to make money on their own. And that's what Chestnut essentially was doing here. She said, we likely won't know the truth until the definitive 30 for 30 is made, revealing all. That could actually be the case. There probably is a 30 for 30 already on this topic. But let's be frank here, and this is where the puns really start to hit. A deal with fake meat is surely sacrilege, a betrayal. Hot dog hearsay. And I say this despite having abstained from meat for more than 2 decades, says Kristen Fleming. Nathan's has buttered Chestnut's buns for over a decade now, and he can't just go around signing up for fake lab meat. It's like endorsing Coke only to turn around and sign with Pepsi, thinking that would be okay. But here's the magic of the Independence Day dog debauchery. which is televised by ESPN. Dietitians and preachy vegans aside, Nathan's contest might be the last unifying event in America. It's completely devoid of politics or partisan opinions. It's just red, white, and blue with a side of yellow mustard. It is, well, it's very patriotic, the event. At least the people in the crowd and those talking. So she does have a maybe overblown point here. Maybe a little hyperbole, but still not a bad point, and that's why I bring it up. It's a contest that represents the best and worst of America. Gluttony, excess, and yes, the love of competition and sheer possibility. The idea that manifest destiny can refer not just to our national borders, but also the bounds of our stomachs. Chestnut and every man doing elite things is the best of us, a walking symbol of American greatness. For the health of our nation, spiritually, not medically speaking, we need Chestnut to appear and compete. Nathan's, Major League Eating, and Chestnut must come to the table and show that we can still mend our differences. Let's squash this beef and let the man eat. I like that piece. Came out yesterday, and I thought it would be just a fun, different way to start the program when we've got some very heavy topics to get to. And the reason I mention it is because yesterday my prediction was they were going a little wrestling with it. That perhaps this was all just a farce, and at the end of the day, he'd come back and it'd be a huge show. But boy, with some of the comments being made by both groups now, and now with the Kobayashi thing, my theory, I didn't say prediction, theory, may have been thrown away. I don't know if they can come to the table and reach an agreement. But speaking of sports, but tying it in with politics, so the opposite of what we're doing there with the hot dog eating contest, and you can argue whether or not the hot dog eating contest is a sport. I would be more than happy to hear your opinion on that. But the congressional baseball game yesterday, Republicans defeated the Democrats 31-11. But what's making the news, and it's actually difficult to find the score, what is making the news are the protesters that stormed the field. I would say, and listen, protesters are not, and this is, I think, a green energy type thing, or an end fossil fuels, or however you want to put it. But I would suggest that that is not the right venue. After you had a shooter at the Republican baseball practice that nearly killed Steve Scalise, and we recall that very troubling time. So to protest at this game may have not been the right venue if you want any leniency or if you want any sympathy to your cause. And also, the game raises money for charity, by the way. Anyway, and if you're not familiar with it, I think you would be, but it's Democrats and Republicans face each other from the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. Climate change protesters chanted while holding signs that said, "Stop playing games with our future," and wore T-shirts saying, "End fossil fuels." They're called Climate Defiance, or at least that's who took credit for this, Climate Defiance. 8 of us have been arrested for shutting down the congressional baseball game. They are behind bars now. Make no mistake, it's the members of Congress who should be locked up, tweeted or X'd Climate Defiance. We have taken the field at the congressional baseball game, plus play has frozen. Congress sends billions of public money to subsidize deadly fossil fuels, but the police are tackling us instead. This Chevron-sponsored game cannot continue. This is unconscionable. Now, the protesters were escorted out by U.S. Capitol Police. It seemed to have if you've seen the videos, there seemed to be a large police presence, again, undoubtedly because of that shooting quite a few years back. And 8 people were ultimately arrested. The Capitol Police wrote in a statement, "We are proud of our officers who are working to keep everyone safe during tonight's congressional baseball game for charity. When 8 people tried to protest on the field, our officers quickly stopped them and arrested them. The 8 people are being charged with federal charges, interference, with a member of the U.S. Capitol Police." Now, there was a small group, and I think this is worth noting because this is going to tie into our next segment, which is quickly about the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protests. But a group from Free Palestine unfurled a Free Palestine and Palestinian flag in the right field section near the foul post. It was met with boos, just like when the protesters ran on the field. They were met with chants of USA. I understand, at least what I had heard, was that when the national anthem played is when the Palestinian pro-Palestinian protesters, I mean, I guess at least this one wasn't violent or using Hamas flags. They started their quote-unquote protest during the national anthem is the way I understand it. But if you recall, again, and this is when I want to give you the exact information here, it was back in 2017 when a gunman opened fire on Republicans at practice for this game. And that's when Steve Scalise was almost murdered. I mean, still dealing with health complications from that episode. And if you're curious, the congressional baseball game has been held since 1909. So Republicans defeating the Democrats, I think they said 4 years in a row now, 31-11. Yes, you got that right. It wasn't a football game. No, those would have been. But 31-11. That baseball game must have been fun to watch. But again, the idea of these protests, I don't know, the climate activists have been this way for a while too. Is their goal to win over people to their cause? I mean, you look at the anti-Israel protesters we had the other day where they stormed the subways and demanded that quote-unquote Zionists raise their hands. Terrifying and intimidating tactics, hearkening back to a very scary time in world history. But do they think disrupting other people's commute home, just like when they shut down bridges or won't allow people to go into certain buildings, do they feel that's winning over people to their cause? Or even is that the goal? I'll put that to you. It may not be. It may just be for the attention. I think that's what happened on the college campuses, is for the attention. Look at me, put me on video. I'll then show that I am the one that quote unquote cares the most. I'm the one that's the most aggressive, the biggest agitator, and that means I'm the coolest. Is that what we're seeing in scenarios like that? They realized that they were going to get attention, and the problem is they did get the attention at the baseball game because, as I said, I struggled to find the score this morning. Instead, every article was about the protesters. So I guess getting their message, if that wins people over to their message, getting it out there for the world to see. We're going to talk about some other sickening protests. And just a quick, and it's only a quick couple updates on it. Then we're going to talk about the Republicans holding Garland in contempt. Now, I want you to remember, no one is above the law, right? How many times have we heard that in the last few weeks? No one is above the law. An important message. That is, unless you're Merrick Garland and Biden saying that they can't, or that he's immune, I should say, from prosecution for contempt of Congress. So not everybody is not above the law. That's a weird way to word that. So we're going to talk about that. We've got a lot to discuss this morning. We're just getting started, and I'm already running late. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in the historic Gafford District. So radicals, a far-left organization, they're plotting to shut down D.C. when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits. That's on July 24th, by the way. The People's Forum, as they are known, tweeted, "The people charge Benjamin Netanyahu with genocide. When the car criminal comes to Washington, D.C., on July 24th, we will shut down D.C. and issue a notice of a citizen's arrest." Remember that episode of Andy Griffith's show where Gomer and Barney were citizen's arrest? Anyway, that's what I always think of when I hear citizen's arrest. The people of the world stand with Palestine and against the genocide committed by Israel with the full agreement of the United States. Join us in forming a red line against genocide around the Capitol building. So I mentioned that because we've seen the protests grow more radical and more radical, with the museum director in, Brooklyn, having her house with red paint thrown at it and a symbol of Hamas painted on her door. You saw, and I think the subway attack was one of the scariest, just thinking of being trapped in that subway, especially if you're a Jewish person, as they are calling you to raise your hand. Terrifying, and I'm glad this has been said before. We've called for it on this program. Many others have as well. Well, Jewish leaders are calling for a New York City mask ban after the anti-Semitic protesters, mobs, hide their face. And this is going back to, because when we first started seeing the college protests, I said, are these college kids so indoctrinated that they are still wearing masks? And it was the COVID masks. And then I realized, okay, that was naive, Frank. It's just like any terrorist organization. They want their identities hidden. An explosion of blatant anti-Semitism by anti-Israel protesters in New York, nearly all of whom cover their face to avoid being publicly identified, is leading some Jewish leaders to call for the return of an anti-mask law that was previously used to fight the hoods of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, they point to the shocking and terrifying intimidation tactic of calling out Jewish people on the subway train. And earlier in the day at Union Square, two protesters, faces also covered, unfurled that banner that read, "Long live October 7th." I didn't see the banner. I think I saw it, and it didn't look homemade. Where would someone even buy that? That seems like a good way to track them down. A mask law will make a difference, said Scott Rickman, regional director of the Anti-Defamation League. It effectively tanked the Ku Klux Klan. Nobody wanted their face to be seen. New York's law was on the books for nearly 200 years until it was repealed in 2020 during, of course, the pandemic. And they go through, like I said, it was a Brooklyn Museum director and the Jewish board members, their homes vandalized. And some leaders, and this is from the New York Post, are comparing the rising anti-Semitism, specifically in New York City, to the 1930s, saying that the Nazi playbook has come to life in 2024. You let people spray paint the homes of residents because they sit on the board of the Brooklyn Museum. What does it lead to? This is what the Nazis did in the 1930s, said Michael Nussbaum, former president of the Queens Jewish Community Council, said. At least two homes had the red triangle symbol that Hamas uses to denote targets marked for death. Think of that. This is the tactics. And you can say, well, the college kid protesters and some of the other protesters, they really, maybe they're being naive, but they're looking at it from wanting a ceasefire and protecting the people, the Palestinian people. But this is their group. This is their people now that they are aligning themselves with. So they must keep that in mind. Mark Triger, the head of the Jewish Community Relations Council, called the anti-Semitism in New York a crisis and an emergency. We're experiencing and seeing the Nazi playbook come to life in 2024. There is a concerted effort underway to disassociate Jews and Jewish identity from schools, curriculum, universities, museums, hospitals, organizations, and everyday life, which was a tactic employed by the Nazis in the 1930s, he added. This is the modern manifestation of the Ku Klux Klan, the pro-Palestinian movement. And some call it pro-Palestinian, as we say here, anti-Israel, anti-American, and anti-police. These protests are not protected under the First Amendment because they are engaged in targeted harassment and incitement of violence. Brooklyn Councilwoman Ina Vernkopf, a Republican who is Jewish, says the city has hit a crisis point for anti-Semitism a long time ago. It's a scary time for the Jews, she said. While protesting is one thing, she said marchers have felt emboldened to resort to more brazen behavior. I will say, and I don't blame her for that, but this disclaimer that everyone feels the need to say that we're all for free speech, but this is wrong. We can all see that this is wrong. When you start the intimidation tactics, when you start the violence, the destruction, it is no longer a peaceful protest. She said, what is next? We're going to see Jews killed in the street. Well, when you see the banner, remember the banner, Long Live October 7th, unfurled in front of that tribute or that memorial to those that were lost on October 7th. And you had one agitator telling Jews he wished, quote, Hitler was still here because the Nazi leader would have, quote, wiped you all out. As Vernkopf said, protesters are chanting no Zionists. That means no Jews. Jews are going to leave New York. They'll go to Israel. That's why we need to support Israel. The anti-Semitism is now in our face and out in the open because of weak leadership. And as Carol Markowitz said, and this is going to be we have two other quick things on it. She talked about where is the protection for the residents of New York City the Jewish residents of New York City. And I think that's a very fair point, and we're going to tie that in because there is a tie-in, obviously, as you see these protests devolving into pro-Hamas protests, what Blinken had to say about Hamas. So stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Last thing on this, Carol Markowitz, says, how much more are Jews in New York City expected to take? And she gives the recent history. I've been writing in these pages about the growing anti-Semitism in New York for years, but this is the worst it has ever been. It's no longer random attacks that could be blamed on the mentally unwell. There is now a coordinated threat to Jewish presence in the city. Hate doesn't have a home in our city, Mayor de Blasio said back in 2019 after those spate of attacks back then. You remember that? De Blasio had famously blamed Trump supporters for the increased attacks, saying, I want to be very, very clear. The violent threat, the threat that is ideological, is very much from the right. Now, he never explained, de Blasio never explained how the shadowy MAGA fans existed in such large numbers in his deep blue New York and were able to disguise themselves so well. But it's gotten so bad now that even Comptroller Brad Lander and Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, both normally good friends to Jew haters, feigned alarm at the open anti-Semitism they helped to foster. City Council Speaker Adrian Adams, meanwhile, is looking to stoke these flames of anti-Semitism further by working on a completely pointless ceasefire. The war in Gaza won't stop because some city councilwoman says so. And that goes back to my point, if you recall, on the college campus when the girl that started a hunger strike complained that she was starving, as if she thought the minute she said she would start a hunger strike, there would be a ceasefire and the Middle East would reach peace. Again, showing you the level of narcissism with these people. But she said, Jews in New York find themselves in a very hard place. The city has long been a haven for the Jewish population. The last few years have exposed something. Now it's hard not to notice that the worst eruptions of vilest hate is happening in New York specifically. The mob is masked to conceal their identity and able to be violent, then disappear into crowds. It's worth noting that when the regular attacks on Jews were happening during de Blasio's term, with hundreds of attacks caught on video, only one perpetrator, only one during that time, ever served a day in prison. Jews are getting the message that no one will protect them, and they're largely not allowed to protect themselves. And Mayor Adams even seemed to, in some ways, he seemed to want to cut off the obvious criticism that Jews have largely been left exposed in the city by saying a minority of those who want us to live in fear, who want us to say, police departments, you're not doing enough, who want us to turn on our allies, we can't turn on each other. What would Mayor Adams do if he were in that subway without a security detail? Would he raise his hand as a Zionist? What does he advise his city's Jews to do? He's not turning on each other. It's not turning on each other to demand more than words. Hate has no home in New York. Well, then prove it. I thought that was a powerful piece. One last thing, Blinken did slam Hamas for refusing that ceasefire proposal, saying terrorists could have ended Gaza bloodshed with one word, and that was yes. It was a deal that Israel accepted, and the world was behind. Hamas could have answered with a single word, yes, and this would all be over. And that's a point we have to drive home. The problem I have with a ceasefire is, you recall, there was a ceasefire on October 6th. Hamas cannot be trusted. We had that piece for you yesterday. You can't make deals with the devil, I think was the name of it by Michael Goodwin. Something to that, I'm paraphrasing. So the ceasefire, as history shows, gives them time to build back up and then attack, as they have promised to do. They've promised more October 7th. Now we move along here. Republicans did vote to hold Garland in contempt of Congress because he would not release the audio of President Biden's interview with special counsel Robert Hur. Talk about making conspiracy theories. Let's pretend, not pretend, let's think for a moment. Let's say that interview was fine. Now, Hur said he didn't want to get Biden on the document charges because if they took it to court, he'd be seen as kind of, and I'm paraphrasing again here, but a bumbling old man and kind of a grandpa figure, and people would have sympathy for him. Well, of course, the Biden administration, the Biden campaign came out outraged. That's not the case. That's not the case. He's lying. So they said, well, let's release the audio. And they said, well, no, we'll release the transcript. So they released the transcript, just creating more questions than really answering, creating these conspiracy theories. So the 216 to 207 vote is a win for the House GOP after numerous members privately voiced concerns over backing the measure, leaving the Republican priority lingering for nearly a month. With Republicans' razor-thin House majority, they could afford to lose only 2 votes if every member was present. Representative Dave Joyce, Republican from Ohio, was the only lone Republican no vote. Now, Republicans have the transcript of the conversation, and while the president discussed no items relevant to their impeachment investigation, the GOP has nonetheless connected the issue to their probe. Now, this is coming from Politico, but what we learned yesterday is that somebody is above the law. Remember this as they continue to tell us about no one is above the law. Threat to the justice system. President Joe Biden's Department of Justice issued a memo Wednesday declaring that Attorney General Merrick Garland is protected from prosecution for contempt of Congress because of Biden's use of executive privilege. The memo's release conveniently came hours before the House of Representatives took the long-anticipated step to vote on holding Garland in contempt of Congress. Republicans wanted the audio tapes of Herr's interview with Biden, insisting written transcripts provided by Garland were insufficient after Herr revealed that Biden experienced mental lapses and poor memory when interviewed. All right, just a quick update there. All right, we are going to talk about Hunter Biden. You guys are quiet this morning. Yesterday we had such great conversations. You're quiet. What do you think so far? What do you think about this attack on Tim Scott? Again, I think it's inter-party or friendly fire against Tim Scott. I think it's people that want to either be VP or in the Trump campaign that don't want Tim Scott for some reason to be VP, because there's a lengthy piece that was on the New York Post and then shared by many media outlets saying that anonymous sources speaking on anonymity are saying that Tim Scott's not even in the top 5 or maybe just the top 5. Just doesn't have it. Then they give like a laundry list of why they don't think he has it. And as soon as I saw that, I said, this is either someone that wants to be the VP or this is someone within the Trump campaign that doesn't want Tim Scott to be the VP. Also, let's talk about Hunter. I'm going to talk about Hunter. Oh, one last thing about Biden, real quick, I guess you could say. We've been talking about the real fear about the border and about terrorists crossing the border. And then we heard about the mass amnesty, which has been largely ignored by the mainstream media. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas is facing scrutiny over a report that hundreds of thousands of non-citizen asylum seekers had their cases closed without a ruling, ushering in a sort of, if you want to think of a back channel, mass amnesty. Kevin Kramer, a Republican from North Dakota, said the American people deserve transparency and accountability regarding the administration's handling of immigration and border security. The current state of affairs at our southern border is unacceptable and demands immediate and effective solutions. And we had those numbers for you yesterday that even with this crackdown on the by the Biden administration about the border, how many thousands of people are let in every day. And it's really interesting to see because the media realizes how big of an anchor this is around Biden and how bad it is for him because voters have consistently made immigration a number one priority in the polling. So the Biden administration is getting concerned. So they put this executive order, which they said they could never do, that the border's fine was what they started with. And then there's nothing more we can do. And then after 3.5 years, okay, here's something we could do, but it's the Republicans' fault. Well, that crackdown, as the media was reporting it, the toughest crackdown on the border in years. In years. And you have to ask the question, how many years? Probably 3.5-ish. Trying to, of course, protect him. Over 350,000 asylum cases since 2022 were closed by the administration if the migrants involved did not have a recorded criminal history, per data from the Syracuse University's Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse, a nonpartisan data gathering organization that tracks immigration cases and backlogs. The New York Post reported the mass amnesty move earlier this month, Kramer led 20 other Republican senators who also signed the letter, citing the Post article requesting answers from the Biden officials regarding whether the report is accurate. I'm not going to go through everybody who signed it. But former acting ICE Director Tom Homan reacted to the report recently on Fox and Friends, claiming they haven't done a single thing to slow the flow. And I guarantee you the executive action is going to be another insult to the American legal system. So there's just a quick update on that. Oh, here we got a couple. Thank you for the waves. I wasn't fishing for waves here. I was just saying quiet on the topics. I'm just wondering if I'm honing the topics properly. But here is a comment from a viewer, Tulsi Gabbard for VP. Her name has been thrown around, but I don't know. I have not heard if she received one of the kind of the vetting forms. But again, going back to what we've been saying on this program so frequently, I don't know if we're going to know everybody that has the vetting forms. I don't know if we're going to know who Trump's really looking at. I just find this Tim Scott hit piece very interesting. Somebody is concerned that he has a real chance for it, because you don't just come out with this and say, because they even made it sound like there was going to be more VP shortlist people that were right here. Inside Trump's Veep stakes. Top contender falls down shortlist. Not a standout or a game changer. That can only be looked at as a hit piece. And who? By who? Not by Democrats. It's going to be either by someone wanting VP or someone in the Trump campaign who doesn't want Tim Scott in there for some reason. I happen to like Tim Scott, but I think Trump has a laundry list of great people that he could pick. So you can weigh in who you'd like to see for VP. What do you think of this viewer's comment? Tulsi Gabbard for VP. We're going to talk about Hunter Biden when we come back. We do have a lot about the campaign in general by both Biden and Trump, and also New York issues. I'm not sure when we will get to the New York issues, but we definitely have to, because there's some Cuomo updates, some Hochul updates. And an update on a story I brought to you, I believe, on Monday, but it may have been Tuesday, with the idea that the Regents exam will no longer be necessary for students to graduate high school in New York State. And I think they said in next year, I think, is when the goal was. And we talked about how that is kind of perhaps a way to manipulate numbers while dumbing down the education system. But as long as those numbers look better, I don't know. We'll talk about that. The New York Post has a piece on that this morning. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I wanted to highlight that we will not be having a Steuben Senior Services Fund guest this morning, because tomorrow, I wanted to have a couple days here because we've had so much to catch up on, but tomorrow we're going to have representatives from the Cardboard Boat Regatta, which is this Saturday in Watkins Glen. That's always a fun time. I will have for you soon, actually probably on tomorrow's program, when that will air on our stations. If you've never caught that in the past, it's just kind of a fun, I think it's about an hour and a half look back at what happened at the Cardboard Boat Regatta this Saturday. So we normally play in a couple weeks after, and I will be a host as well as Elisa Trosha, who has joined us on the program for a few years. All right, let's get back to it. The big issue still, Hunter's sentence. Let's talk about this. And we can talk about Trump's sentence as well. I mean, I think that's has a bigger implication, obviously, coming up July 11th. But with Hunter's sentence, you've already seen a little bit of wishy-washiness coming from the Biden White House. If you recall, Chris Wallace had said, I think push comes to shove, if the sentence gives prison time, Biden's going to pardon him. No matter what he said, he's going to pardon him. Now the White House has not ruled out that Biden would commute Hunter's sentence. So again, remember this when nobody is above the law. Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, said, I haven't spoken to the president about this since the verdict came out. And as we all know, the sentencing hasn't even been scheduled yet. I've got to ask you the question. Do you believe she really hasn't spoken to him about this? And this is not to get conspiratorial. But if you're the press secretary and you know you're going to give a press conference, do you think you have a conversation with the president about what would arguably be the biggest topic? She was then pressed by a second reporter, and she reiterated, I have not spoken to the president about this, and what I'm saying is he was asked about a pardon. He was asked about the trial specifically, and he answered it very clearly, very forthright, meaning that he would not pardon his son. But as they went forward, and where's the exact quote? I marked it here. Oh, there it is. A reporter asked, so you're not ruling out that Biden would commute Hunter's sentence? And Jean-Pierre said, as we all know, the sentencing hasn't even been scheduled yet. I don't have anything beyond that. So not ruling it out. This is just interesting because kind of a loophole. Said he wouldn't pardon him, but could he commute the sentence? That's a very real possibility, though many have speculated that Hunter won't get any real prison time. But Joe Biden has claimed, and I want your opinion on this before we go to break, and then we'll dive into it a little bit more. Joe Biden claims the Hunter would have received a plea deal, quote, if I weren't running for re-election. Now, what's interesting about that is he's suggesting some type of bias in his DOJ or some type of bias in the courthouse in Delaware, which is really a stretch. But also remember, he was given a plea deal, a sweetheart plea deal. They wanted more. They wanted him, or Hunter and his team, his lawyers, wanted full immunity from future crimes and past crimes and just about the most perfect get out of jail free ticket you've ever heard of, with the judge even asking his lawyers, have you ever seen anything like this before? And they responded no. So he was offered that deal, but his lawyers and maybe the arrogance and the cockiness of his lawyers and having the Biden name, Hunter, who we talked about yesterday, there's numerous pieces about this, growing up arrogant, not being able, not going to be touched. He's a Biden, the royalty in Delaware. And look at all he's done in his past and got away with all of it. Let's just take something as simple as the drug use and got away with it. Would have got away with, and probably still will get away with, some of these shady finance dealings. So why would he ever think that they wouldn't accept that immunity section of the plea deal? A comment from a viewer: to commute a sentence means the power to reduce or lessen a sentence resulting from a criminal conviction, like I said yesterday. Yeah, well, absolutely. But this is the first time they didn't really weigh in on it at the White House. But the point is, it's not a pardon. So it's the kind of the loophole, I think, is why people are raising red flags over this, so that he wouldn't have any type of real jail time, even though I think most of us believe that's not going to happen anyway. Okay, so Joe Biden claiming Hunter would have received a plea deal, quote, if I weren't running for re-election. Get your opinion on it, and I'm going to talk about it here a little bit more in just a second. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. So as Biden, meaning President Biden, told Politico earlier this month, if I weren't running for re-election, he would have gotten the plea deal. Now, that means, again, just like yesterday, the article we had by Stephen Collinson, who said, now with Hunter's guilty verdict, that discredits Trump's two-tiered justice system. That throws that away, that blows that up, that the system was rigged. To accept that, and if you want to accept that, that's fine. If you accept that, you have to ignore the sweetheart plea deal. It's as simple as that. The outlet, again being Politico, reported that the president asked family members for updates on his son's trial while Joe Biden was in France. Okay. Thank you, Politico. The president changed up his schedule to race home to Delaware Tuesday so he could get that, after the guilty verdict, so he could get that photo of him hugging him, embracing his son. That was all over the news that night. I don't have to go through the history of why he was found guilty and all that. But do you agree with that statement? And by the way, the campaign has not responded to comment about the statement that allegedly was given to Politico. And I say allegedly, I mean, Politico is reporting it. But if I weren't running for re-election, he would have gotten the plea deal. He had a plea deal. They wanted complete immunity. Yeah, so the question is, so are they saying Hunter is a professional criminal? Why would he need immunity from future issues? Like what, parking tickets? If this is one of Trump's children, lock them up would be the battle cry. Absolutely. It's a complete double standard. You know it. You see the difference in how I'll just ask yourself, even if you don't like Trump, even if you know in November you're going to vote for Biden, ask yourself if this would have been the same if it were a Trump child. And by the immunity, it was because of future, like the IRS charge, It was anything else that came up about his past shady business dealings. That's what they were looking for immunity from. I'm not sure if they were thinking so much about the future of what else might come, what else might arise. But it was about these upcoming lawsuits as well. We got to take another short break. Boy, this show's going fast. We almost have an hour down. But as I mentioned tomorrow on the program, the cardboard boat regatta guests during the Steuben's Senior Services Fund section of our program. Also, mark your calendar. This is for our friends in the Village of Painted Post. There is going to be, and you may have heard about it by now, but there is going to be a hearing about the West Water Street industrial site. Learn about the history of the former foundry site and help inform standards for its potential future development. So that's coming up, and I know this is kind of an issue in the past about what could be put there at the foundry site, what would be acceptable to the residents there. So they're going to have this forum. They don't call it a forum. I'm going to call it a forum. It's Tuesday, June 18th. So you go to vote. That is interesting. It's not voting day. Go to vote for the for or against the Corning Painted Post school budget, and then from 6 to 7 p.m. you can go to this forum. If you miss the 18th because you're busy voting, you have Saturday, July 13th from 1 to 2 p.m. This is being held at the Painted Post Village Hall, which is 261 Steuben Street. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back. Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you so much for joining us. We have a comment from a viewer that Hunter Biden is the poster child for white privilege, and as defined by the left for so many years now of what white privilege is supposed to mean. Yeah, I mean, it's this entitlement that we're seeing from Hunter Biden. As James Bovard said, Hunter Biden verdict shatters family's myth of legal invincibility and has endangered Joe. Well, they thought they had a perfect venue for it. The Bidens are kind of like the Kennedys, this royalty in Delaware. But James Bovard says Biden's re-election campaign was hit by a torpedo Tuesday when his son was convicted. Now, I don't know the answer to that. I know it takes away a little bit of the sting that he thought he would have by calling Trump a convicted felon, as if, when he goes to the debate, which is coming up in just a few weeks, at the debate, being able to pepper him with that was a goal. Many people have speculated that's the reason why this trial was brought up in the first place, because as we talked about with the former Congressman Joe Semplinsky last week, this would not have been a case, meaning the Trump case would not have been a case that you or I would have ever been charged with these quote-unquote crimes, where the difference is if we had the crimes that Hunter committed, we definitely would be charged. So he can't really pepper him with that convicted felon unless it opens up the door. And Miranda Devine has a piece I'll get to probably at the top of the hour saying the same thing, that this is a good opportunity for Trump. But ironically, the political fate of the most anti-gun president in American history could be settled by the firearms conviction of his son. And it goes through the history and why he was found guilty. We don't need all that. Since Hunter didn't pause in the door of the gun shop to fire up his crack pipe, jurors were supposed to presume he was as clean as a hound's tooth. Hunter was caught in a legal tar pit his father helped create. In the 1980s and 90s, Senator Joe Biden was amongst the biggest drug warriors on Capitol Hill, championing policies that sent hundreds of thousands of Americans to prison. In a 2019 piece headlined "Joe Biden and the Era of Mass Incarceration," the New York Times hyped Biden's favorite fix, lock the blanks up. And he didn't cuss completely, but I still don't want to say what he said. So the idea is, after the jury handed down its decision, Hunter Biden issued a statement admitting that he was disappointed by the outcome, but stressing that recovery is possible by the grace of God, and I'm blessed to experience that gift one day at a time. This nation would be blessed to experience political recovery via one jury verdict, and in November, the election result it may affect. So the idea, this kind of shattered this invincibility of the Bidens, kind of knocked Hunter down a peg from this entitlement, this privilege that he's always had. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but just to kind of highlight what we'll be talking about in the next hour when it comes to it, Miranda Devine saying Trump has the stage set to nail Joe Biden for his lies about Hunter's laptop. Miranda Devine has been dogged in her reporting on this issue from day one. We also have a few things here about the Biden campaign. Kamala Harris receiving some poll numbers that are not in her favor if she were to run in the future for president. Also, if something were to happen and she would need to be president, or if Biden were to step down before the race. Not good numbers. We also have a few things here about Trump, of course. Trump's going to be back on Capitol Hill today. Maybe we'll talk about that. And we do have some New York State updates as well. But this hour of Frankly Speaking is... Well, no, we got just a second. No, we do have just a second. There is... No. I don't want to go too much into it because everyone is so... What do you think about Bob Menendez's case? Have you been following that? Not much to say there, but just interesting, isn't it? And that's a prime example. I know people have talked about this on the program in the past, where Bob Menendez, still a sitting senator, where you have Santos booted out by Republicans, even though he had not been found guilty yet of anything. It's interesting how one group rallies around their team and the other one doesn't. Okay, now I do have to take a break. I knew I was going to run a little bit late there. As always, as you know, we got some waves coming in. We have some comments coming in. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Feel free to reach out at any time on any of these issues. We were mentioning kind of the hit piece on Tim Scott. What do you think about that? Who would be fearful of Tim Scott? It's got to be another VP candidate, or it's got to be someone in the Trump campaign that doesn't want him for whatever reason. I personally like Tim Scott. I'm not saying that he would necessarily be my choice, but he would have definitely been on the short list of my short list of people for Trump. There's also some other names obviously being thrown around. We had a viewer earlier saying Tulsi Gabbard. So do you have a prediction of who you'd like to see? And also, what do you think about this hit piece on Tim Scott? What do you think about Cuomo kind of making the rounds, talking about his response to COVID? We can weigh in on that as well because, as I mentioned, we will be talking about some New York State issues before the program is over. That is a guarantee. But right now, we got to take that break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. And we begin hour number 2 on this Thursday morning edition of Frankly Speaking. It is 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to those who joined us in the last hour as well. A couple comments from viewers. At 68, I didn't know what commute sentence meant. That's why I put the definition out there. To me, it's typically a word camouflage for the public's eyes to glaze over. That is a very good point. Another question, where were the Secret Service agents? Don't the president's families have them? I'm not sure about this time frame, and I'm not sure how that works. I think if I can read between the lines, I guess you're saying like when Biden was, Hunter Biden that is, was in the throes of this drug abuse and buying the guns and these type of things. I can't imagine, but we've heard of Secret Service kind of looking the other way, not in a bad way, just saying that, letting the people live their lives. I don't have the answer for that. I haven't heard anybody reference that one way or the other. I'm assuming he had no Secret Service protection at that time. Then another comment from a viewer, Tim Scott would be an excellent VP. I agree, but as I said, the long knives are out for him by somebody, as the New York Post put out a piece saying that he is dropped on the list, that he doesn't have it, and giving a kind of a laundry list of why he shouldn't get it. That's kind of opposition research by somebody. I'm just curious of who that would be. Did you see, and just to show you, because I know I talk about media bias quite frequently here on the program and why there's such a distrust in media. This could be one reason. The New York Times still cannot admit that Hunter Biden's laptop is real. We talked about the campaign, 51 intelligence agents signing, or former intelligence agents signing onto a letter during the election saying that it was probably Russian disinformation, which we know is wrong. We've had so many examples of people NPR said they wouldn't even report on it because it was so fake. And the New York Times still, after the FBI used it or confirmed it, it was used as evidence in that trial. This is what the New York Times said. Hunter Biden's laptop, revealed by the New York Post, so they at least give credit to the New York Post, comes back to haunt him. Now, that's the same New York Post that was censored for that article. And sadly, the media, and again, another reason why they're being discredited so frequently, calling for that censorship. We'll tell you more about that in a moment. This is coming from the New York Post itself. So far, the headline, so good. Then we get the subheadline, which echoes language in Katie Robertson's dispatch. Quote, Many claims about the laptop's contents have not been proved, but it played a role in the prosecution of Mr. Biden over a firearms purchase. Many claims. Name one bit of the laptop that has been proven wrong. Just one. And they go through and list everything that I guess they suspect that the Times would maybe try to use as an argument, which is just not factually accurate. That is Hunter Biden's laptop. So they said only if Joe Biden is Only if Joe Biden is photographed holding a sack of cash in Hunter's laptop, then it would be worthy of coverage. And even then, the Times would frame it as Republicans pounce. And I thought that was such a good point on that. Republicans pounce that they found that photo. Now, they're just showing you an idea of what would need to be done for the New York Times to maybe accept it, and then they would still suggest that it was Republicans pounds. But that's not the way voters think. This is a scandal of ethics, and that's the way it will be judged. Joe Biden doesn't need to be charged with a crime or even impeached for voters to see that's what's on the laptop and believe he acted inappropriately. And they're referencing not just because most people point to at least the mainstream media points to drug use and like that, trying to get sympathy for Hunter. But there was so much in there about the shady business dealings. And that's why the New York Times is throwing smoke, saying, nope, not everything's been proven. Joe Biden doesn't need, and I think that's an important point, Joe Biden doesn't need to be charged with a crime or even impeached for voters to see what's on the laptop and believe he acted inappropriate. The Times' denialism is such that when it mentions that the Post coverage was gagged by social media, that the New York Post was censored by New York media, this is what the New York Times said. Quote, conservatives said those reactions were evidence of liberal censorship. It's always conservatives say, it's always Republicans pounds. Conservatives said those reactions were evidence of liberal censorship. So an outlet was censored by something that ultimately was proven correct and was right the whole time. That's not censorship, according to the New York Times. And was it just conservatives saying that? How is it not censorship that Twitter locked out their account? As they said here, again, the New York Post commenting, we're curious why this article was published at all, meaning the New York Times. Did it start as a mea culpa and got lost along the way? More likely, it's meant to reassure its liberal readers. Yes, the laptop was used to convict Hunter Biden, but rest easy. We'll try our darndest to make sure it doesn't become a bigger deal. Yeah, this is another laying the groundwork for more censorship on the issue. Now, look at all these waves coming in. Thank you. Miranda Devine says that Trump has the stage set to nail Joe Biden for his lies about Hunter's laptop. I will say, I don't like what the stage is set. I don't like all this language about the debate. We got to remember, let's not set the bar too low. But the last time Joe Biden met Donald Trump on a debate stage, he lied that his son Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation. Quote, a Russian plant and a bunch of garbage. Do you recall that? Now it was used as evidence. This was 2 days after Biden's senior campaign advisor, Antony Blinken, induced Mike Morrell, a former acting CIA director, to write the dishonest Dirty 51 letter. And remember, they're doubling down on that Dirty 51 letter, saying it was their patriotic duty, even if it proved to be wrong. The Biden campaign was desperately scrambling for a way to respond to the New York Post laptop scoop. So Morrell got 50 other former senior intelligence officials, mostly from the CIA, to sign the letter. Campaign will be thrilled, he wrote in emails obtained by congressional investigators. We think Trump will attack Biden on the issue at this week's debate, and we want to give the VP a talking point to use in response. And of course, that's what he did. On the debate stage, this was back in October of 2020, after he'd done lying about the laptop, Biden looked down the barrel of the camera and told the American people, you know his character, you know my character, you know my reputation is for honor and telling the truth. We sure do. In their debate later that month, Trump will get his first opportunity to confront him about his lies. Now, will he do this? And this one thing I've always found interesting about Trump, when there's certain issues, he's going to pounce on this. He doesn't. Then there's issues you didn't expect to come up. He brings up. You never know. To this day, the liberal media, with egg on its face for naively towing the party line, still can't bring itself to confirm the laptop, as we mentioned with the New York Times. And and it goes through the extensive forensics. Miranda Devine has done, actually, I think she has a book coming out about this in September. She's done an amazing job, and she goes through the history, and it does get a little bit wonky. And not that I don't want to bring it up to you, we wouldn't have time to go through all the dogged reporting that she did. But she is suggesting, and I would like your opinion on it, that this is a winning topic for Trump during the debate. Now, I do think, and you don't know because of the hypocrisy, maybe that's the right word, in politics, you don't know if it makes Biden sheepish to bring up the label convicted felon. I'm not sure it does. I could still see Biden using it. Because let's say Trump comes back and says, your son's a convicted felon. He can play, Biden that is, can play the sympathy card saying my son had an addiction and it was wrong and the justice system prevailed. And, you can hear all of that about the justice system. I don't think there's no way that Hunter will be sentenced before the debate unless something really freaky happens. But he won't get sentenced before the debate, so it can't be something where he commutes the sentence or does ultimately pardon him. So he won't. He can always say the justice system prevailed, etc., etc. So I'm not sure if I don't want to disagree with Miranda Devine. She does a great job. I'm just not sure it's the cudgel that could win him the debate. But I don't think he should steer away from it either. Did you know? Well, this is another example. Since we're talking about the media a little bit before we go to break. And then we'll maybe get away from it. Maybe we'll go to New York. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But the media doesn't see why this shouldn't be a feather in the cap of Biden. They still don't understand the Trump voter or really the American people. Globally, Biden receives higher ratings than Trump. Then just to add that wink, wink, nudge, nudge into Biden, that he better change his tune, still most disapprove of how Biden has dealt with the Israel-Hamas war. With many around the world closely following the fiercely contested rematch between U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, a new Pew Research Center survey finds that internationally, Biden is viewed more positively than his rival. Across the 34 nations polled, a median of 43% have confidence in Biden to do the right thing regarding world affairs, while just 28% have confidence in Trump. They don't understand why the feather in the cap in this scenario is in Trump's cap. They never quite understood that. Why it's the same going back to Make America Great, that statement in the America First idea, where people see, especially when you've got immigration being their number one issue, when you see, someone out of work because they lost a job, because they see that there's favoritism to other countries, when you see the foreign policy of this administration coddling people like Iran, turning their back on our ally, Israel, when they see that plays up to the world crowd, the global crowd, it just solidifies Trump's base saying, yeah, that's why, and this is what they would have said back in 2016, that's why we voted for him. We don't want the one that's the favorite of certain European countries. We don't want that. We don't want someone that's being pushed around by the UN or NATO or whoever. We want someone that's going to put America first. So they still don't quite get it. I thought that was interesting. But also, and this is, we got a few more things about Biden. So make sure, and Trump. So make sure you stay with us. We got to take our first break of this hour. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right. There, misjudged my time. I went to get a drink. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, couple comments here. Well, you know what? We're going to get to them in a second because they're a little bit lengthy. I didn't get a chance to look at them all because, as I said, I was going to get a new ginger ale. And there's a lot to cover here. So we'll read your comments. Keep them coming in after the next break. So I got good news for you. You're welcome for this. This is coming from CNN. I want you to remember, I don't know what day you get paid, but let's say tomorrow's payday, and you can finally afford some groceries, and you go to the groceries, go to the grocery store, or maybe you go to get gas or whatever you need, your bills come in, I want you to know that according to CNN, the economy is strong, but it may not be enough for Joe Biden. Yeah, see, its economy's strong, folks. I know. My bank account doesn't show it either. But according to CNN, it may not be enough for Biden. But just remember, at the end of the day, the economy is strong. Also, Biden has an EPA rule that will cause blackouts for millions of Americans, a new study warns. And this ties this into what we're doing here in New York. The grids are not ready for this. We know this. President Biden's aggressive climate change regulations targeting fossil fuel-fired power plants will create widespread electric grid instability and lead to mass blackouts impacting millions of Americans. This is coming from a study commissioned by North Dakota state government. I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but we could tie that in with, of course, what we talked about with Hochul. And let's get to Hochul. Let's talk some New York State issues for just a moment. But we tie in with the electric vehicle mandates and the like here in New York State and how, let's face it, the system is not ready for it, but they're going to push it anyway because of that virtue signaling. They really do not care at the end of the day if there are massive grid shutdowns because they get to say that they fought global warming. Let's talk about Cuomo for a moment. Years later, nursing home deaths still haunt Cuomo's COVID legacy. Shouldn't they always? Is it shocking that it's only been a couple years and people are still remembering it? I don't think it's something that we'll ever forget. Now, the legacy media won't report on it like they should, but it was just 4 years ago, but it seems longer. Then Governor Andrew Cuomo provided daily pandemic briefings. Remember that. He held 111 often nationally televised informational briefings. And don't think for a moment, the reason he wants to run again, he misses that attention. He ate it up. Do you remember that? And then he would be on the program with Chris Cuomo, and they'd be laughing it up. All while we learned that his family was getting pushed to the front for COVID testing at a time when that was rare, getting all these, I guess the word of the day, kind of these shady deals. But Cuomo's COVID legacy will also include how he handled deaths in nursing homes, a number that reached over 15,000. Now they're still trying to present. Listen to this guy, Gortfield, saying Cuomo was a national hero. But deaths in nursing homes and the then Cuomo administration's unwillingness to provide information drew outrage. It wasn't just not providing the information, it was a covering up of the information. Melissa Del Rosa even shocked when the real numbers started coming out, saying that it could really hurt her. They started messing with the death toll in nursing homes, said Hammond. The main thing that they did was that they left out nursing home residents who, because they got sick, were taken to the hospital and then died in the hospital. And that was about a third of the total death toll that they started leaving out of their official reports. But in February of 2021, the state attorney general released a scathing report. The Cuomo administration undercounted deaths by as much as 50%. Then, of course, he released that book, and they put a really interesting line in here as well. The book, called American Crisis, Leadership Lessons from the COVID-19, netted Cuomo a $5 million publishing deal. Now, Crown Publishing later canceled plans to reprint the book, so it cost them, Crown Publishing, a fortune. Cuomo began writing the memoir with government staffers, and that was one of the big ethics issues, remember? Taxpayer funding, basically, these staffers to help him write the book. But they started just weeks after the first case was exposed. He later sought approval from the state's ethics agency, which greenlit his request in 2020. The panel later stripped its approval, meaning the book. This is the book. And has since demanded Cuomo return the $5 million in profits. So this is going to be a stain over his legacy. Of course it should be. Between the sexual harassment and all that, that should definitely be on the list of reasons why Cuomo's legacy should never see him in elected office again. Unfortunately, because we're in New York, I don't know if that will happen. But tying it in with that book, Cuomo is now seeking more state-funded legal costs. That means state-funded, you and me, folks, in lawsuit Former Governor Andrew Cuomo is asking a state judge to force the state comptroller's office to pay his legal costs in litigation related to a sexual harassment case brought against him 2 years ago. It's another string in a tangled web of litigation Cuomo has found himself in since he left office, as he attempts to refute claims of sexual misconduct made against him by several women. Now, again, I guess when it comes to Cuomo, it's no longer believe all women. We know there's been lawsuits against him. I don't want to go through his history of when he resigned. We all lived through it. But now he's asking for more of our money, and we have stories for you about this quite frequently. More taxpayer money to pay for these lawsuits. The AG has been fighting our federal subpoenas for 2 years and deliberately forced us into the FOIL process, which she's now also abusing, said Cuomo's spokesman, Rich Azzopardi. The Article 78 proceedings against the comptroller is to make things whole as we seek to enforce the Attorney General's FOIL obligations. The comptroller's office declined to comment on the lawsuit. So there's your Cuomo update. Now, he did testify before Congress behind closed doors, and the Republicans of New York held a press conference. I specifically received this from Congressman Mike Lawler, but alongside Lawler was coronavirus pandemic chairman Brad Wenstrup, Elise Stefanik, Nicole Malatakis, Claudia Tenney, Mark Molinaro, Brandon Williams, our Congressman Nick Langworthy, and Nick LaLota. So we'll jump ahead to what our congressman said about Andrew Cuomo and his disastrous handling of COVID-19 in New York's nursing homes. And this is something that I know I mention a lot, but I think it's worth mentioning a lot. It was a despicable, tragic move by Cuomo, and then he tried to hide it because he was at the height of his popularity. So it wasn't about actually doing what was right and looking into what was happening. It was about looking out for number one, looking out for Cuomo. And never mind the people lost along the way. Well, first we'll start with Elise Stefanik because she's first up on the list. This day has been a long time coming. Each of our offices have heard from constituents who have lost loved ones resulting from Andrew Cuomo's fatal directive issued on March 25th regarding our nursing homes, forcing nursing homes to take positive COVID patients. But today's deposition was a step to delivering accountability and delivering long overdue answers to those families who are still mourning the loss of their loved ones. That's the reason why I have one of the problems, and great job by Elise Stefanik. That's one of the problems I have with that statement years later. This still is a stain on Cuomo's legacy. Yes, it should be years later. There are still people grieving the family members they lost. Now, Congressman Nick Langworthy said today, as New Yorkers, was a critical day for accountability. Upwards of 15,000 families never got the appropriate opportunity to say goodbye to a loved one as they perished in a nursing home. They aren't allowed to say goodbye because an overzealous governor, drunk with power, changed the law so they could no longer communicate with their loved ones in their last hour. The March 24th executive order defied any logic why you would bring COVID-positive patients back into an environment where the governor himself once said, quote, it would run through there like a flame through dry grass, end quote. He lacked empathy, he lacked apology, and he lacked accountability. So let's hope that something comes from this. I don't believe it will, but I'm glad that it's still being put at the forefront of people's minds. By the way, we're going to take oh my goodness, we got to take another break. A couple other New York issues. When we come back, then we're going to get back into the presidential campaign, read some comments. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you for joining us. A couple of viewer comments. I was a supporter of Tim Scott, but this was and is the reason why I can't get behind him now. And it's an article I can't show you on the screen. I didn't have time. It's an article where he believed that he didn't believe the 2020 election was stolen. I'm not suggesting there won't be a difference of opinion on issues and still be able to work together, but this is big. And look what Pence did and who he turned out to be. The results absolutely need to be looked into. Shouldn't be cheating, period. My 2 cents. Thank you very much. Another comment from a viewer. And I'll explain why that was a reference to Tim Scott. Another viewer comment. I'm thankful for the forthcoming election. Hopefully the U.S. will turn itself around and get back to being a respected nation and resume its role in leadership in the free world. Well, thank you for the comments. We try to read all of them. We sometimes miss a few, but I do appreciate it. And what that reference is, if you're just joining us, there's kind of a hit piece out. Came out yesterday. It kind of caught my attention because it says Inside Trump's Veep Stakes. And I thought it was going to be about each of the candidates. But no, it was really a hit piece on Tim Scott, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Long seen as the odds-on favorite to be Donald Trump's running mate this year, is slipping in the VP race and is now widely seen by people close to the presumptive Republican nominee as extremely unlikely to be chosen. I'm not sure why this is coming out. It can only be op research from a different candidate, a VP candidate, I should say, or someone within Trump's campaign who doesn't feel that he would be a good pick, trying to get into Trump's ear. Because it's 7 pages of why, and I don't believe it would be the New York Post that's pushing it, but why they don't believe that he will get picked. It's extremely unlikely he will be picked, said one insider. I'm not a big fan of the insiders and speaking of anonymity and those type of things. Not that I would put the New York Post to cheating or something. I'm not saying that or lying about it. I'm just saying that it concerns me why the all-out attack. His star has become less bright for sure. Still a top 5 pick, but not the strongest. I guess the big indication is they're saying he's not very good on TV. I think he does a good job on TV. I also think, I know when I interviewed him in radio, and it was radio, so it was just basically essentially a telephone call. Very nice guy, very pleasant person. Really enjoyed talking to him. So that's just my 2 cents on it. So I didn't I understand why, but it was just a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Trump, don't pick Scott by somebody. Whether that's one of the other VPs, you'll see it all the time. You'll see others as well. A comment from a viewer. I appreciate Nick Langworthy's words on Cuomo. I know firsthand how it feels, and that person should not serve in any capacity ever again. Thank you for your comment. Yes, I thought Nick Langworthy did a great job. I thought Elise Stefanik did a good job there too. I would say that when they talk about him maybe running for mayor or governor again, or for whatever office, I don't think he'll pull a Spitzer and try to go comptroller. He wants something where he's in the limelight, so it's either mayor or governor, maybe president. Remember, he was delusional enough to think he could run back in 2016, even though he was polling, less than 1%, still making the moves to run. So never underestimate his ego. But I think when you hear that, well, can he get it? People still like some of his policies or remember him during the height of his popularity during COVID. Remember that disaster. And you can point to everything, the sexual harassment, all that, but remember that disastrous decision and then the cover-up to allow COVID-positive patients in nursing homes amongst our most vulnerable. So, yes, I think he is disqualified from any elected office ever again. Whether my say will have the final say, I have my doubts. Unfortunately, I think if he runs for mayor, he probably runs for mayor. Remember, his right-hand person, Melissa Del Rosa, who was embroiled in this scandal too, basically was Cuomo light. The polls showing that she could win just about nearly any elected office in New York. I think that's an important point when we talk about what we're facing here in New York. And that's why I know a lot of people have had fun when Trump is packing in rallies in New York and even in the Bronx. I think it's a great move that he's doing it. I think it shows his popularity in so many ways. I will still always be, and I hope that you can call me on this one day, I will always be skeptical that a Republican can win New York. That is not to poo-poo anything. That is just me being jaded. That's all that is. Back to New York. Hochul's prison closure. This has been a very controversial topic. We've talked about it with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano numerous times, where basically she could go to a prison and say it's closed in 90 days. All those workers who, remember, they're already struggling to find corrections officers. All those workers displaced. Her closure list is expected any day now. We're expecting it at any time now, said State Assemblyman Scott Gray. He's talking about a list from Governor Hochul's office, a list of state prisons scheduled for closure. The list could include as many as 5 prisons. The North Country has 3, one near Cape Vincent, one in Ogdensburg, and one in Governor. My office continues to prioritize efforts in keeping Governor Correctional, located in the 117th District. If you know what that is, I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. If the state decides to close prisons, workers would be given just 90 days notice Gray is worried at how quickly jobs could disappear if his prisons make the list. There are economics to it. We lose 400 jobs in the blink of an eye. I'm not going to go through the rest of it, but expect that list soon from Governor Hochul, and we will have a 7-minute Phil Palmisano on the show in just a little bit. I've got to reach out to him. He reached out to me the other day. We got to get that set in stone because there's a lot to talk about. And final issue on New York State after we come back from break, and then we'll be talking more about the presidential campaign. There's a really, really out there piece this morning about Trump on CNN. It's an opinion piece. I hope I can get to it. But the idea, and I don't want to give too much away, it's hesitantly defending Trump. It's, I don't even know how to, it's almost like the woke turned on themselves and realized, we have to defend Trump in this way if we're going to stay true to our cause. Very fascinating. I know that wasn't the best at keeping you hooked, but I think you'll really enjoy it. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. And we are back. Look at our beautiful view of historic Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street. Comment from a viewer. Cuomo was a good soldier for the Democrats most of the time, although he got too big for his britches. He pushed the Democrats' COVID mandates as he was expected to do. He wasn't capable of writing a book like most people, and the Dems helped him. It's how the Dems launder money into politicians' bank accounts. It is interesting, the book thing, because if you look, because conservatives make so much more, or sell so many more books. But if you look, there's actually a piece, I think it was at the New York Post today, and it's nothing new. This comes out every few years, but another study shows that the New York Times best-selling list is biased against conservatives. And that's been proven historically. If you even look at their kind of disclaimer, they can be. So it's not necessarily what you would think of as a bestseller. It's what they want you to think is a bestseller. And that's, you guessed it, not conservatives. But I'll continue. And yes, Dems do use that. Think of how many Democrats have made these books where they got these huge amounts of royalty and sold hundreds of copies. Cuomo and the Democrats got caught between a rock and a hard place, and now they don't know how to get both of them out of it. Cuomo still has dirt on the Dems, so they can't push too hard. Yeah, I think they want him to go away. I think they want him to go away for a long time. But he does, as you are saying, have dirt. Now, it was this week, Tuesday. Yeah, we were talking about the Corning Paper school budget and kind of devolved into this topic because it happened to be the same news story of the day, which was New York State's regents are considering a proposal that would remove regents' requirements to get a diploma. Well, the Post editorial board, I'm not going to say they were late to the party. It just sounds like maybe they were listening to Frankly Speaking. The state education department just announced that it plans to make the value of a New York high school diploma worthless. Parents should be up in arms. Gone will be the need for students to pass 5 state regents exams to earn a diploma. Instead, all students will have to show knowledge and skills in 7 areas, including critical thinking, cultural competence, and global citizenship. High achievers who pass enough regents tests won't get a distinctive diploma versus the old tested system of regents diplomas, advanced regents diplomas, and mere local ones. Instead, every district will have to confer the same diploma on every senior who meets utterly watered down state requirements. So and remember what they're proposing, you could still take the regents test if you want. It's voluntary. It won't do anything. It won't give you a better degree. It won't help you in any other way. Think about that. So yeah, right now it's regents, advanced regents, and local, and now all of those will be lumped into one. It does not matter if you take those tests. It doesn't matter what kind of classes that you take. All the diplomas will be the same. So whether they know Shakespeare from Che Guevara, every graduate gets the same participation trophy. Great way of putting it. And that's exactly what it is. Meanwhile, the ill-defined cultural competence, global citizenship, etc. standards reek of thought control. SED might as well be demanding the DEI loyalty statements that have become all the rage in college faculty hiring. Yeah, maybe this is better at promoting kids to go to college. Maybe they'll be better set at college with these type of standards. A New York high school diploma, in short, will soon be worse than useless. It won't show any proficiency in math, science, or any kind of history, but only the ability to mouth woke platitudes, proficiency in preferred pronouns, and be able to talk about quote-unquote oppression. This is the tail end of a drawn-out process involving a pet blue ribbon commission engineered to recommend this nonsense after Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie spent years stacking SED's ultimate master, the state boards of regents, with ideologues committed to educational nonsense. This is turning our high schools into the colleges. Meanwhile, SED has adopted of the results of the pandemic-induced learning loss as the new academic normal by setting revised performance standards for lower grade state exams based on the disastrous math and English test scores of 2022. The only ones who benefit are the leaders of the state's teachers' unions, who no longer need worry that any of their members is at real risk of being exposed as incompetent because the kids aren't learning anything. Yet it guarantees to accelerate the exodus from regular public school systems as middle-class parents turn to private schools, while lower-class ones rush to whatever public charter schools the teachers' unions can't manage to kill. So that was just an update on a story brought to you earlier in the week, and I'm glad the New York Post passed it along to us. So I had mentioned Kamala Harris. The numbers are not looking great for the vice president. They did a new in-depth poll with the Politico Morning Consult polling company, and it highlighted her liabilities and strengths, with voter concern about Joe Biden's age haunting his chances of re-election. A new poll shows his next in line, Vice President Kamala Harris, facing serious doubts about her ability to win the presidency herself or to perform the job well were she to inherit it. Not a boost of confidence there. The Politico Morning Consult poll reveals that only a third of voters think it's likely Harris would win an election were she to become the Democratic nominee. A third? Folks, she didn't even get a vote in the primary. Her biggest claim to fame, because she was a rising star during the debates, because she called her now boss essentially a racist or a bigot. That was her big attention-seeking moment when everybody said it's finally her. She's going to get it. And then she got very cocky, because who did she say? I think she said it to Tulsi Gabbard, right? She goes, basically, I'm number one, or you're not even in the big leagues with us, or something like that. Very, very condescending. And after that, boom, she didn't expect. It was. I think it was the next debate after she called her now boss a bigot. It was the next debate. She was so sure of herself because she had such a big performance the one before. She didn't realize that in primaries like that, when there's so much moving around in the polls, that everybody saw, oh, she got a bump. We need those votes, so we're going to go after her. She was not prepared whatsoever to be criticized, and it happened. It was Tulsi Gabbard, I remember, who got a really good couple lines on her, and then she plummeted, and she never got one vote because she dropped out before the first vote. So to think that even a third of people would suggest that she could win the presidency is shocking to me. And just 3 of 5 Democrats believe she would prevail. 3 of 5. A quarter of independents think she would win. The skepticism extends to her potential future role as the head of her party. 42% of voters described her as a strong leader. Where? Where are those 42%? Because wouldn't you just have to point at the border? You'd say those 42%, hey, do you like how immigration is going? Because remember, she was the border czar. She was put in charge of that. Both are well underwater when it comes to poor ratings, her and Biden. Biden at 43% favorability and 54% unfavorability. Harris at 42-52. So underwater. Harris's efforts to reboot after a rocky start appears to have paid some dividends with important Democrat constituencies. Now, I think what we're seeing here, why her numbers are even higher than you and I would expect, is because many Democrats are realizing that she may ultimately be the nominee or may have to step in at some point, because we've seen, and I'm not saying this lightly, it's troubling to watch, like the Juneteenth celebration. It's troubling to watch the decline in Biden, so I think they are starting to put on a happy face, if you will. Here's a comment from a viewer before we go to break. Where is our school board? They should be standing up telling the state no, meaning in the regents' exams. I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm not sure which school district you're in. I would agree with you, but I don't want to speculate on various board members, and they have the ties to the schools, many of them, and former teachers and things. So I'm not sure where they stand. I think they should be telling the state no. I have not heard that. I would love to see a letter. If you get one or you hear of one that they're sending to the state, let me know. But we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Again, that spectacular view of Marcus Street from our roof here at the Hesselson studio. Thank you again for joining us. Comment from a viewer. Biden keeps polling above 40%. Who are these people? Things are so bad, I have not even met anyone who admits to having voted for him. Yeah, sometimes polling is, well, again, it's why I don't trust polls. Though, having said that, that leads into another comment about a poll. America could see a surge in people just not voting. In a recent survey by CBS News, YouGov, I think this is a little disingenuous because you got to remember 2020 was a different election year. You were in the middle of the pandemic. You had many people that were voting against Trump more so than voting for Biden. It was a very different year. So they said it's different than the numbers are even bigger than they were in 2020. I don't remember too many people in 2020 saying they were not going to vote. But the poll conducted between June 5th and 7th found that only 80% of respondents said they will definitely vote in November. This is down from the same time in 2020. Do we get 80% of people to vote? Anyway. All right, this is the article because I can't run. Okay, here's another comment from a viewer. I know, I love how this happens. I jump around on so many topics. I really appreciate this because there's such good comments from our viewers. Corning, yeah, okay, so you're talking about the school board in Corning. This is why we the people should vote no on every budget till they do the right thing. Thank you very much. The budget vote is coming up on the 18th next week. We will make sure to remind you, no matter which direction you're headed in the vote, that you are at least reminded to get out and vote. Okay, so this is an example where it's someone that's proving their woke, not woke bona fides. I don't know if I want to say woke, but kind of their liberal bona fides. But then realize that they have to stick up for someone they don't want to stick up for. Where do you hear this? This is from CNN. And the opinion author at CNN is Una Hansen. And she writes, mocking Trump's appearance reveals an ugly truth. Despite plenty of substantive material, including those convictions, to critique Trump's body, Trump's body continues to be a go-to target for comedians, cartoonists, and everyday Americans who dislike him for political or ethical reasons. Turning his looks into a punchline may get laughs, but his mockery reinforces biases that contribute to the body image struggles faced by men and boys. Let me take a step back. I think, yes, obviously that's all comedians do, and it may get laughs amongst the SEALs that support your political causes, but it's very comedy. Well, the late great Norm Macdonald one time said that in the era of Trump, it's really easy to be a bad comic, and it's very, very difficult to be a good comic. Because as a bad comic, you go out there and say Orange Bad Man and everything. Look at Stephen Colbert. He's made a career off of it. But going back to this piece, because it just caught me by surprise that CNN would ever publish this. Because Trump himself is known for publicly bullying and body shaming others, some may feel it's only fair for him to be on the receiving end of the same kind of ad hominem attacks. Well, they caution, however, against bullying the bully, especially because it's the innocent bystanders who are hurt most by the jokes. Even if someone is laughing along, they are still internalizing that message that their own body could become an object of ridicule too. The public discourse around Trump's iconic hairstyle heightens concerns shared by balding men about whether they appear masculine or youthful enough. It's a very uncomfortable part of aging. There are a lot of ways we try to hide it instead of accepting it. Hair loss is a very sensitive, insecure place for a lot of folks. If we find ourselves making fun of Trump's body, it's an invitation to reflect on the power of internalized cultural messages about which bodies deserve respect. These uncomfortable moments offer a chance to dissect our own views of gender and body image and being able to, with a mindful eye, be honest with ourselves about our own biases. Enough about that. This is 4 pages. What did you think of that? We've seen a lot of different takes on Trump, but asking a liberal readership at CNN to reconsider making those really low-hanging fruit, corny jokes that are going to get you a cheap laugh, don't do that, because you could be hurting the people around you, the men and boys. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. We can't end the show on that, so stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Wrapping things up on this Thursday morning edition. Thank you again for joining us. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio on Marcus Street in Corning. You know, when we get towards the end of the show, I sometimes breeze through a couple of quick things. But coming from Fox News, the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, Tom Dundon, reacted to a report showing more billionaires are shaking off their issues with Trump, with the economy emerging as a top issue for the November election. With the November election looming large, economic perils and geopolitical unrest continue to plague the Biden administration. Well, Tom Dundon, he's a billionaire Carolina Hurricanes owner, said historically some of the way Trump treats people doesn't sit well with them when you have choices. But there's really not many choices anymore. And this is coming from a report that Politico says a number of billionaires are willing to shake off their personal concerns with Trump because they're, it goes back to that Trump nostalgia idea. They remember the peace and prosperity of those years as compared to what we're seeing now. The world is on fire. I know they keep telling us the economy is doing really well. I wish somebody would tell, I can't even say my accountant. I wish someone would tell my bank account that were the case. So basically, some of the things have gotten to where it's hard to support nonsense, meaning what Biden is putting out there, the decisions Biden is making. Also today, Trump travels to D.C. to meet with congressional Republicans and speak with the nation's top business executives. I understand this was put on by Elise Stefanik. She's trying hard for that VP. Who knows? No, I don't want to speculate about who put that out about Tim Scott. I would have no idea. The former president's meeting with congressional Republicans will be looking ahead at the policies that will save the nation. Such policies, according to the campaign official, include Trump's commitment to protecting seniors with no cuts to Social Security or Medicare, policies that actually secure our border and make our communities safe again, an American first foreign policy that reclaims peace through strength and world leadership, and economic policies of lower taxes that reignite the vibrant Trump economy we had just a few years ago. With less than 5 months to go before Election Day. Wow, that's hard to believe. Trump will kick off this Thursday morning at the Capitol Hill Club, a popular members-only haunt for House Republicans in Washington, D.C. that also serves as home to the Republican National Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee, and it starts around 9:30. An invitation sent to senior House GOP aides on Tuesday morning showed that Trump is coming on a joint invitation from House Speaker Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise, Tom Emmer, and Elise Stefanik. I wish to be a fly on the wall. The off-the-record discussion, which is scheduled to start at 11:15 a.m., will be steered by Larry Kudlow, who served as the director of the National Economic Council in the Trump administration from 2018 to 2021. Oh, that'd be interesting. Yes, to be a fly on the wall. Boy, it's hard to believe we are on time. This is kind of echoing something I said, I think, earlier this week, but the Post editorial board kind of puts it more succinctly. The secret Alito recordings, where they secretly recorded Samuel Alito, are a new low in the left's drive to smear the justices. Yes, we've seen the leak from the Supreme Court, which there should have been a better investigation that we should know who did that because that was a disaster for the court. But so many politicians calling for stacking the courts, et cetera, et cetera. And let's face it, Biden ignoring their directive on school loans. But they're saying that this is a new low in the smear campaign. And Clarence Thomas talked about that smear campaign in a speech recently. When it comes to Windsor and the larger media echo chamber, they expose a subculture eager to engage in dishonest and shady tactics in an ongoing attempt to smear right-leaning justices and the Supreme Court itself as biased and illegitimate. They're the threat to our democracy, but too oblivious to see it. So if you want to find that piece, it's at the New York Post. Thank you to everybody who joined us this morning. Thank you for all the great comments. I really do appreciate it. We did have a couple comments. Here, quickly. I've done my own random polling. In this region, I rarely find someone that agrees with the current administration's direction on anything. What surprises me is how well informed most people are. Great comment. Next viewer. The school board is silent most of the time. They get their directives, fall in line, and the taxpayers keep voting and keep losing. Or do they? Now regents. The truth is it's anything but for the kids. Stop using that as a smokescreen. Yeah, it's been a political ploy for a long time. The Vote Yes for Kids campaign. Now we are really out of time. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, starting at 6. We'll be joined by representatives from the Cardboard Boat Regatta, so you won't want to miss it. I look forward to it already.